America is having a debate about political violence. Is it the fault of conservatives, or is it the fault of the side that wants to kill everyone who disagrees with them? This chin-scratcher of a conundrum has inspired people of goodwill from all over to come together with Democrats to try to find a solution. For instance, in a recent discussion at Harvard University, left-wing students calmly and quietly presented their side of the issue, while right-wing students responded by screaming in terror as an angry mob chased them with pitchforks and torches. The come-together event was sponsored by the student group Kill All Fascists, with KAF President Vladimir Mohammed Jihad Alinsky telling the assembled rioters, quote, "We must put an end to fascism by any means necessary." And some of you may ask, well, what do you mean when you say by any means necessary? And we must put an end to people who ask that by any means necessary. Because remember, silence is violence. So we must meet violence with violence until there's silence, which is violence, which we must meet with violence, which is exactly like silence, except you wear masks and beat people with metal rods. Remember, no justice, no peace. And injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. So no peace until there's justice everywhere, which will never happen. So we can beat the hell out of people forever and still feel great about ourselves, unquote. After Alinsky's speech, the leftist students gathered for a friendly barbecue, but it had to be called off because all the Jews had escaped. The New York Times, a former newspaper, also contributed to the national conversation with a think piece by Times editor Hannah Lioness Jones, the author of the famous 1619 Conspiracy, which declares that the founding of America was really a plot to destroy the economy of Africa by buying up all their slaves so there was no one left to mine the vibranium. Miss Lioness Jones wrote, quote, "You have to understand what violence is. When a black drug addict dies while resisting arrest, and we pretend that's evidence of systemic racism in order to incite riots in over 150 cities where businesses, homes, and entire neighborhoods are left in ashes and at least 25 people are killed, that's not violence. We need a totally different word for that, like flower sunshineism, or skittery-doodle happy timeitude, or Black Lives Matter, something that sounds really nice and heartwarming. Violence is when Charlie Kirk says that Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't have the brain power to be a Supreme Court justice for no other reason than that she's a black woman who doesn't happen to have the brain power to be a Supreme Court justice. That is hate, and hate is violence, and violence must be met with skittery-doodle happy timeitude until everyone who disagrees with us is dead, unquote. To get the conservative side of the argument, we visited an undisclosed location where half the staff of the DailyWire is hiding under lockdown after receiving death threats from the pro-transgender group called Say I'm a Woman or Die. One staffer, who preferred to remain anonymous because he selfishly wants to live to be 30, told us, quote, "I'm sure with a magnifying glass and a spotlight, you can find the occasional right-wing lunatic who wants to hurt someone. But that's totally different from an entire leftist culture that demonizes disagreements as fascism, so that over 50% of leftists believe it's justifiable to..." But at this point, the staffer was interrupted when a flaming arrow crashed through the window, bearing a note from Say I'm a Woman or Die that read, "Say I'm a woman or die." The staffer angrily hurled the arrow back through the broken window and was immediately cited as an example of right-wing violence by the New York Times. The incident was ridiculed that night by Jimmy Kimmel, whose courageous fight to ensure that every comedian on television has the same political opinion has won him the support of the Hollywood leftist group Hate Donald Trump or Die. The group issued a statement saying, quote, "All right-wingers must be silenced, and silence is violence. So it's the right wing that is violent because they're silenced." Debate over. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show. All right, we are back laughing our way through the Schumer government shutdown, and we have to thank Chuck Schumer for shutting down the government. The country can only be improved. If you have not yet pre-ordered After That, The Dark, please go and get it. This is a hardcover edition of it. It's the first one I've seen. The Daily Wire got one before I got one. So I'll have to tell my publisher about that, but you can get one at dailywire.com/Klavan or at Amazon or anywhere you want. The dailywire.com/Klavan page will take you anywhere you want to go. You can get signed copies of it from the Daily Wire. It's a story of two absolutely normal men who don't know each other, live in two separate cities, who suddenly commit two very similar brutal murders. And Cameron Winter has to figure out the connection before it happens somewhere again. Winter is the thing that kind of adds to it is that Winter is an agnostic who has fallen in love with a devout Christian girl who thinks the whole thing is because of demons. So it's a very complex and interesting, fast-moving story. You will love it, and I will love you if you will go and pre-order it so we can put this thing on the New York Times bestseller list, which would be a gas. It would mean that you had put two of my books on the list in 1 year, which I think you get a medal for, or possibly a great book. Also, wherever you are watching the show, whether it's on Daily Wire Plus, as you should be, or if you're watching it on some other place, or if you're just imagining you're watching it as you lie in bed at night wishing you were watching it, leave a comment on your bedroom wall or wherever you happen to be. And if that comment is sufficiently morally despicable, we will read it on the air because it will fit right in with the rest of our content. Today's comment is from Grateful Pipe and Cigar, 3239. Can there possibly be 3,238 other people with that name? It says, the content of this show is just sick and disgusting. Where do I sign up? See, now here's a man after my own heart. If you are that kind of sick and disgusting person, you belong here. You finally are, you're home. Just think of this as your home. Today's episode, we will now get to, is if you finished pre-ordering After That, the Dark. If not, we'll wait. Oh, all right. Today's episode is, Are We Crazy to Love Our President? And the reason I'm doing the show, we'll talk about all the news and also this new movie, One Battle After Another, but I want to put it in a personal context because all this week I have been arguing with a series of good friends who are also good conservatives who hate Donald Trump. And these are really intelligent conservatives. They love the country. They want to preserve the country. And I hate this thing online, this political thing where your side is always supposed to be right 100% of the time. And, you can never say, I thought January 6th was mishandled. No, it was absolutely perfect. You're not allowed to say things like that. And anyone who disagrees with you, this is like politics online. Anyone who disagrees with you must have some psychological reason for thinking that, or you can cite some place where he did something wrong or got something wrong so you can dismiss him. But the fact is, reasonable people disagree. This is part of the thrill of living in a place where you have freedom and can argue about things and figure out the best way forward. And these people I was talking to, they had solid, well-considered reasons for why they really, really dislike Trump. And I think they deserved answers about why I think this administration is absolutely great. I don't have a lot of feelings about Trump personally. I've never met him. To me, he's the president. So that's how I feel about him. But I'm loving this administration, and I'm finding it hilarious and fun and a relief from where we've been and where we were going. And I agree with them that Trump sometimes says things I disagree with and does things I disagree with. But they hate this guy. And my question is it me or them? And we're going to get to the answer. So I'm here before you today having slept virtually no hours. I slept no hours. And you know what I didn't do? I didn't have some Beam's Dream Powder. That's what you got to use because Beam, first of all, it's proudly founded in America. It's run by people who share our values, hard work, integrity, and most importantly, delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all-natural ingredients, reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. It's designed to help you fall asleep and stay asleep and wake up feeling amazing. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next day grogginess, just great restful sleep. Plus, it tastes incredible. No shortcuts, no junk, just science-backed ingredients that help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up ready to produce results. Built by founders who believe in hard work, integrity, and delivering on a promise, exactly the kind of businesses we want to back. Beam has already logged 17.5 million better nights of sleep for people who refuse to settle for mediocre sleep. I don't sleep a lot, but this stuff does put me out. And here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. So with my discount code, Klavan, you can get their best-selling Dream Powder for just $39. Go to shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Klavan and use code Klavan for up to 40% off. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Beam? I can spell Beam, but how do you spell Klavan? It's Klavan. I'm glad you asked. Chapter 1, the Katrina strategy. So first of all, I think before we really sit back and judge Trump, because Trump is different than other presidents, and he has a different affect, a different way of being, and he's doing things that we haven't seen a president do really forever, I think, as far as I'm concerned, because that's how long I've been alive. And I think we have to acknowledge, first of all, that the media has lost a great deal of power. It's lost it to people like us, like the DailyWire and all the other new media. But it still has enough power to create a distortion field that affects all of our feelings, no matter where we feel. The unfairness toward Trump distorts your vision. On our side, it can make you defiant so that you refuse to acknowledge any of Trump's flaws or mistakes. And on the left, it just exacerbates their Trump hatred. I mean, I know a lot of nice liberal people who were absolutely shocked that Trump put up a picture of Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, in a sombrero to indicate that he wanted to spend our money, our tax money, on health care for illegals, which is actually true. That is in the bill that they are trying to get passed when the government shut down. So I know liberals who are really upset about that, but they weren't upset at all when Joe Biden encouraged the sexual mutilation of little boys and girls like he was Joseph Mengele, the crazy, evil Nazi doctor. The media is a distortion field which affects the minds of everybody, even if you know it's happening. So they just didn't feel it when Biden was doing that, castrating little boys, cutting the breasts off little girls. An actual Nazi-style atrocity went right by them. But the fact that Trump put a sombrero on Hakeem Jeffries really bothers them. And that's what the media does. That's what the culture is. It's like an atmosphere that you breathe. Even if you know you're breathing it, it has an effect on you. So with the government lockdown, just for instance, you get the coverage. This is caused by the Democrats. But you get this kind of coverage from ABC News. I guess it's Good Morning America, I think.
Democrats refusing to back down, saying they will not vote to fund the government unless Republicans reverse cuts to Medicaid and keep healthcare premiums from rising for some 20 million Americans. If the government shuts down, as many as 4 million federal employees could go without a paycheck. 2 million troops could be forced to work without pay, leaving military families in limbo. Heather Campbell's husband is a major in the Air Force in Alabama. She worries about making ends meet for their 3 kids.
The 3 kids with the Christmas hats and all this stuff. This is what I call teardrop news. You know, they go find somebody, it's sad, and we all love the military, and here's a mom with the military. Aren't you a conservative? Don't you care about moms? And they just absolute, disgraceful coverage. Because here's what this is about. And Trump could be clearer about this, by the way. During COVID, the Democrats used this quote-unquote crisis moment to ram stuff spending into the government. So they ramped up Obamacare so that people who in no way needed Obamacare were using it, including illegals. And they had that Green New Deal, which they called the Inflation Reduction Act, but it was the Green New Deal. They rammed this in, and the Green New Deal is supposed to end this year. It's supposed to sundown. And the reason they did that is because that way when the budget office works out how much it's going to cost us over 10 years, it's not costing that much because it ends in 2025. Well, now 2025 is here. They don't want it to end. They don't want to take that money back. It's the left-wing ratchet only goes in one direction. So essentially what they're saying to Trump is get rid of the big, beautiful bill that got rid of all the things that we promised we'd get rid of, but now won't get rid of. And so we'll go back to where we were, and your signature legislation is dead. It's the same thing that Ted Cruz tried to do to Obama, and Obama beat him because he didn't have the power to make it stick. And I think that that's what's going to happen with the Democrats now. So it's just a lie. They just lie all the time. And Trump, should explain this a little better, but he's settled on this talking point of illegal aliens getting health care, because he thinks that's the best political thing. Everything that Trump does is covered with what I call the Katrina strategy. If you remember Hurricane Katrina, which happened during the W. Bush administration. Trump Trump has accomplished amazing things. He's closed the border. He's deported all these criminal illegals. He's ended the threat of a nuclear Iran. He's helped end conflicts all over the world in Rwanda, Azerbaijan, Cambodia, Thailand. He's cut back government, including a wholly corrupt U.S. aid. He's ended crime and homelessness in D.C. And all of this stuff is a crisis when it happens. Oh my God, he's cutting back the government. Here's a person with tears in his eyes because he's not going to have a job anymore. And it's all played down. The wars that he says he ended were not really wars. They were just a little increased tension. And when he bombs Iran, it's going to be a World War III. And then the minute it's successful, the news about it vanishes. It's just gone. They're completely forgotten. And then we're on to the things that are really going to be terrible. The tariffs are going to cause inflation. They haven't yet, but they're going to. That's the headline. The headline is not borders still closed. The headline is this thing that hasn't happened yet is going to happen, we think, but we're going to play it like it is. So it's all the bad things that could happen are in the news, and all the good things that did happen, which have been unbelievably amazing. He hasn't even been president a year. All of those things disappear. And everything he does is reported as if it were a crisis. And this is the Katrina part. They do this to every Republican president, but it's souped up for Trump. George W. Bush was president, and he would come out and he would say, well, good morning. And they would say, oh my God, he said it was good morning. This is a crisis because it's going to rain and many people are not having a good morning because they're poor and they're black and the systemic, everything the guy said was a crisis. And then one day Katrina hit. And it was a crisis. It was a genuine crisis. Every president gets at least one crisis. George W. Bush was particularly unlucky and got like 3 big, huge crises. So when the real crisis does come, it feels as if, even if you know it's being done, it feels as if this presidency has been one crisis after another, and George W. Bush just didn't handle it right. It was somehow Bush's fault. He didn't like black people. And so the hurricane, I think who was it who said that he didn't like black people? It was Kanye, I think. And so that's why the wind blew down New Orleans, which one of the most corrupt cities on earth to this day. So they took all the money that was given them by the feds to build up the dams and the water breaks, and they just stole it. And they didn't do anything. They didn't improve those things, and they were blown down by the hurricane. That was W's fault. So it's just infuriating to watch this process, but it doesn't mean that everything that Trump does is good. And sometimes, I've criticized him for taking a percentage of private business profits. I think that's a bad idea because it means the government now has a stake in supporting a big business instead of letting a new business that might be better have a startup. I thought the FCC chairman overstepped when he threatened Jimmy Kimmel, even though I think there are legitimate fairness issues for the FCC. But I asked myself, is that the difference between these good friends of mine who are good conservatives hating Trump and me just having the time of my life? And this is the answer that comes to me. All of these friends that I was talking to are political people. They're political observers. They're political experts. They really, really know a lot about politics. They think we win when we have political victories, which are important, right? Cutting taxes or strengthening the military or cutting back regulations. I'm all for that. I think it's important. But my brief is I read the culture. When I tell you to read novels, when I tell you to go to the movies, it's not because I think each movie is important in itself. That's not what I think at all. But I think that artists have a way of communicating where the culture is in some way. And if you consume a lot of it, you start to get a big picture of where the culture is, something conservatives, I feel, know nothing about. I feel the show is unique in that I'm telling you the culture. And when you study the culture properly, it will often tell you where you're going. So I oppose the Bushes. I look back on the George Bush and George W. Bush as bad presidents, not because I think that everything they did politically was wrong, although George W. Bush did spend too much money and he did have this 20-year war that got us nowhere. But still, that's not my problem. My problem was that they both apologized for conservatism. George H.W. Bush said he wanted it to be a kinder, gentler nation. He was referring to Reagan, who was called mean because he cut back the government and made America prosperous for the next 25 years and destroyed the slave state of the Soviet Union. Okay, that was not kind and gentle enough. We were now going to be kinder and gentler. George W. Bush had compassionate conservatism, which, if you judge by the spending and the free medicine and stuff like that, was no different than liberalism. Once you give in to that argument, once you apologize for what we believe in as not being compassionate, which is what's implied, it's not compassionate, it's not kind, it's not gentle, you have lost the argument. It does not matter what you win politically because the culture has been sullied by your apology. To me, the left, the radical left, and the radical left is now in charge of this party. That's why the government has been shut down, because they all have to kowtow. Because Chuck Schumer, this is what the Trump administration is saying, and they're absolutely right. Chuck Schumer is afraid of being primaried by AOC, so he has to look like he's a left-winger. When he voted to keep the government open, he was hounded from pillar to post by the far left. And so now he's caving into the far left, and that has to do with the fact that all of their districts are in cities, and all of the cities, high crime, high spending, dirty, crime-ridden cities, are actually run by Democrats. So, I mean, why was Nancy Pelosi one of the most powerful people in government when she came from this little place in San Francisco that was far, far left? Well, she was a great politician. She really handled herself well, but those are the places where the power is, right? So the power all comes from the far left. And to me, the far left is a bigoted, racially bigoted, hate-filled, abortion-loving, terrorist-loving, child-mutilating, God-attacking death cult dedicated to the disassembling of the most successful, most powerful, freest, richest, best nation that has ever existed on earth, this one. And they want to fundamentally transform it. Who gets elected president and says, I'm going to fundamentally transform the country that just elected me, right? That's an expression of hatred to the country that elected you to serve it, to preserve it, to take this precious thing that has been passed down to you for all these centuries and keep it where it is, at least make it better, improve it, but not to fundamentally transform it. And if you apologize to them, if you accept their vision, they will win. And they manage by their domination of the Academy and Hollywood and the news media to make people feel that they were bad for opposing this death-riddled, God-hating cult that runs one of our major parties and is constantly losing votes, but constantly trying to bring them back in through the border. They were so good at it. They were so good at convincing us that we were bad people, that we weren't kind, that we weren't compassionate, that we weren't gentle. If we did not somehow subscribe to their cult, they were so good at doing it that by the time Trump arrived, it required a man without manners, without any kind of way of holding himself back, a man with skin so thick you could convict him of a felony and he would turn his mugshot into a T-shirt. Can you name me another politician of his talent, of his skill, of his intelligence who would do that? That's what it took to break their grip on our culture, which is the future no matter what law you pass. The culture is the future no matter what law you pass. And so along with the help of us in the new media, with the breakthrough of Elon Musk taking over X, Donald Trump was a godsend. He was the only man that I could see who could win that cultural victory, which is the big victory. Without the cultural victory, there are no political victories. And that's the victory that Trump is winning. And to that, I say this.
We're going to win so much. We're going to win at every level. We're going to win economically. We're going to win with the economy. We're going to win with military. We're going to win with healthcare and for our veterans. We're going to win with every single facet.
Zippity-dee-da, zippity-yay. My, oh my, what a wonderful day.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. Yay! You'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore.
I feel pretty, oh so pretty. I feel pretty and witty and gay.
We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
heard of the audience effect? It's the psychological theory that every person's behavior changes when they know they're being watched. We become more rigid, more performative. Even if there isn't anyone telling us what to do, just the feeling of watching eyes alters the things we do and say, taking away just a little bit of our freedom without us even noticing. Here's the thing. We are being watched. Every time you use the internet, your internet service provider, or ISP, is recording everything you do online. They're watching what websites you go to, how much time you spend there. They can see everything you're doing, even if you're using a private browser. If you don't want to fall victim to this digital version of the audience effect, you don't have to. Just get ExpressVPN. With ExpressVPN, 100% of my online activity is rerouted through secure, encrypted servers. This makes it impossible for my ISP to see what I'm doing online. ExpressVPN also hides my IP address, which is the number that identifies you on the internet. Data brokers use it to build a profile of you, then sell it to marketers and other companies. Would you trust them with your private information? I don't. Just recently, a big data broker was hacked, and the names and social security numbers of 2.9 billion people were stolen. I don't want to give these companies any more of my information. ExpressVPN is easy to use. It takes one click, and it works on all of your devices, phones, tablets, smart TVs, desktops, and you can have it on up to 14 devices at once, so you can give the gift of privacy and freedom to your whole family. I like it because it's easy, right? I'm not a big tech guy. I can use tech. I can certainly press one button. And right now, you can get an extra 4 months when you use my special link. Go to expressvpn.com/Klavan and get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN. That's expressvpn.com/Klavan. And you're probably thinking, yeah, but how do you spell VPN? It's Klavan. Chapter 2, Dirty Jim and Pistol Pete. Now, here are 2 examples of what I mean by the cultural victories that may contain some things that are not terrific politically. So if you're a political person, you might only see the political thing and might miss the important cultural victory. So Pete Hegseth, who's now, his title is now God of War, I think, Ares God of War, I think, maybe Secretary of War, something like that. He summons the military brass, top military brass to Quantico, Virginia, and he makes a rousing speech about how things are now going to change. Here's a little piece of this, cut 3.
This administration has done a great deal from day one to remove the social justice, politically correct, and toxic ideological garbage that had infected our department, to rip out the politics. No more identity months, DEI offices, dudes in dresses. No more climate change worship. No more division, distraction, or gender delusions. No more debris. As I've said before, and will say again, we are done with that shit.
All right. And then he says, Ares God of War goes on to talk about raising the standards and keeping the standards so that these people are lethal, which is what we need them to be. It's cut 4.
And I want to be very clear about this. This is not about preventing women from serving. We very much value the impact of female troops. Our female officers and NCOs are the absolute best in the world. But when it comes to any job that requires physical power to perform in combat, those physical standards must be high and gender neutral. If women can make it, excellent. If not, it is what it is. If that means no women qualify for some combat jobs, so be it.
So just to show you the typical media reaction, here's Martha Raddatz at ABC reporting on this, cut 5.
In an unprecedented meeting, which the former Weekend Fox and Friends host broadcast live, Secretary Pete Hegseth warning hundreds of combat-tested generals, admirals, and senior officers flown in from around the world that the military under his leadership will be dramatically changed.
So you notice that, right? Pete Hegseth is a former Weekend Fox News host, but the generals are battle-hardened. When in fact, Hegseth has been in combat. He's served overseas in Iraq, I think also in Afghanistan. He was nearly hit. He was hit by, but it didn't explode, an improvised explosive device. So he's just a TV host, but the generals are battle-hardened. And let me tell you something about generals. Many generals are battle-hardened, but they're politicians. You don't get to be a politician. You don't get to be a general unless you're also a politician. A lot of these guys know exactly what they're doing. So she could have said, battle-tested Pete Hegseth was talking to a bunch of politicians. Okay. And then finally Trump comes on. He follows him on. This is cut 6.
Defending the homeland is the military's first and most important priority. That's what it is. Only in recent decades did politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, while America is under invasion from within. We're under invasion from within. No different than a foreign enemy, but more difficult in many ways because they don't wear uniforms. At least when they're wearing a uniform, you can take them out. These people don't have uniforms. But we are under invasion from within. We're stopping it very quickly.
So you can look at that and you can say, well, wait, are we have a law, the Posse Comitatus law, which says that you cannot use the military, you can't dispatch the military to do law enforcement, basically, unless it's an emergency. And, Trump has a habit of declaring emergencies and all that. And you can say all that kind of stuff. And I have an actual criticism of this. That's actually not something I'm worried about. Trump has a habit of saying things, but following the law and following what the courts tell him to do. And so I'm not really concerned about that. But I do have one criticism. I don't think we're spending enough on our military. I think we have to spend more on our military. And in order to do that, you've got to start cutting entitlements. And Trump doesn't want to do that because he knows it's the third rail. He doesn't want to step on the third rail. But, it doesn't help to talk tough if you haven't got the stuff that you need, the material that you need. But the culture victory here is huge. And you can laugh, and Jonah Goldberg was making fun of them, and and I listen. I like Jonah a lot. He has ghosted me. He won't talk to me anymore. I don't know why. He's never told me, but he just stopped communicating with me. But, he hates Donald Trump, and he thinks, this is silly that they're doing all this. But it's not true. The bigotry of DEI is despicable, and it feeds bigotry. And this is a cultural matter, right? This is, you cannot appoint people because they're black and not expect them to have no respect, because that's not a reason to appoint anybody. Just if it was wrong when the white bigots did it, it's wrong when the black bigots do it. And so they attacked Charlie Kirk because he said that Michelle Obama and Joy Reid and Ketanji Brown Jackson didn't have the brain processing power to be in their positions. But how can you help but question that when people are appointed for the color of their skin? And this thing with women in the military, in combat, when they can't do the job, is deadly. It is deadly to our soldiers. It is deadly to morale. And as far as I'm concerned, even though I have met many military women whom I totally respect, I'm not sure it's not deadly to the cohesiveness of the troops. I'm not sure. I do not want men actually out on the battlefield with women. I think it's just a really, really bad idea. They're different. And if we don't acknowledge the differences between men and women, we have lost. We've lost. If we buy into the script, we've lost. Everything is lost. I know it sounds silly. I know you think, we got Trump in office. Oh, we have a good chance of winning the next time. Oh, it's great. If you lose the culture, it doesn't matter what you do. It really does not, because this is what affects the minds of the young people coming up. So what Pete Hegseth does, you can make fun of him for talking, tough and all this stuff, but this is huge that he is stripping away. He is basically saying, we can get rid of this. Compassion, go to hell. Kinder, gentler nation, go to hell. We're doing what has to be done because that's reality, and that's what conservatives are all about. Same thing with James Comey. James Comey is now indicted for perjury. He's accused of perjury, and we don't know. He says that he didn't leak classified documents through another party. The other party says yes, he did. We don't know, but he was indicted by a Alexandria, Virginia grand jury, and Alexandria, Virginia is about as blue as the country can get. And this is. The New York Times calls this unprecedented, which I love. This made me think about this. Play cut 8. This is what I thought about when the New York Times called this unprecedented.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, I think that we could say it was, let's not forget that Donald Trump perfectly legally, even if not admirably, paid off a woman to keep her mouth shut. Perfectly legit thing perfectly legal. It's not legit, but it's a perfectly legal thing to do. He had his lawyer pay her, and then he paid the lawyer back. And in this little thing where it says, why did you write this check? He wrote legal fees. That they made that into over 30 felonies, right? It's not even a misdemeanor. You could say it's false record keeping, but it's not even that. Nobody else. And they turned it into a felony because they said it was trying to influence an election through fraud. That's what they did. They really did that. They didn't even say how it was done. They told the jury, well, you may not know how it's done, but it was done. It was important to convict him. And they convicted him. And this is what Comey said should be done to the president on the day that Trump left office. So he wanted this done to the president when he left office. It's cut 9.
Convict him, bar him from future service, have the local prosecutors in New York pursue him for the fraudster that he was before he ever became president, lock him up for the garden variety frauds he did there, but don't give him that center stage, that dominant role in our national life just down the street from where Joe Biden is trying to heal this nation.
So when the New York Times calls this unprecedented, what they mean is that Trump said, I want these guys prosecuted, which he's, kind of not supposed to do. Biden did the same thing, but he leaked it through the New York Times. So maybe the New York Times just feels left out this time because Trump did it directly. Look, I don't like to see our public officials prosecuted and jailed. I don't like to see it. I thought I was appalled when they did it to Trump, and what they did to Trump was appalling. I don't like to see it. But I'll tell you something I want to see less. I want to see less that the Democrats do it and they never have it done to them. You got to make them pay. You got to make them pay so they know maybe next time we don't do this. And you know what? I say to my political friends, we take a risk with Trump. He's a huge personality. He can go over the top. He might do things that damage the process that keeps our country alive, that keeps our country what it is. He might. But my bet is that he will break the grip of this death cult on our culture, and then J.D. Vance will restore a more normal governance in the aftermath. That's what we're betting on. I think it's a good bet, and I'm thrilled with what is going on in this administration. Now, I am so glad I have a Helix Sleep mattress, especially today. I did not sleep at all last night. I must have slept. If I slept half an hour, that's about it. That's why, I stand before you, you're thinking, how does he do it? It's because even though I'm lying awake, I'm lying on a Helix Sleep mattress and I am comfortable. One thing I've loved about my Helix mattress is how well it does with temperature regulation, which really eases some of those annoying middle-of-the-night wake-ups. That's essential as the temperatures continue to be warm. Plus, it's easy to connect to other wearable devices, so you can actually see the data to back up your sleep improvements each night, no more questions. What makes Helix different is they don't just sell you a random mattress, they actually match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, or in my case, a non-sleeper, they've got you covered. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz and find your ideal match. And trust me, when you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept or lay awake on anything else. Right now is actually the perfect time to upgrade your sleep because Helix is offering a fantastic fall savings event. Go to helixsleep.com/Klavan to get 20% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Klavan for 20% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/ how do you spell it? No ease in Klavan. I just make it look this easy. It's KLAVAN. Chapter 3, One Battle After Another. I want to show you how powerful the culture is, what the culture has been for the last 30 years, by looking at a movie that just came out. Axios is a moderately left-wing news site that I subscribe to, so I get some of the news. And it's not far left, but it does buy into a lot of leftist stuff. Recently, this week, I think, it called the culture a reality-creating machine. And it worried over the fact that Trump was taking away the reality-making machinery from the left. They're worried about that because he is. He's doing it purposely. He knows exactly what he's doing. This is not me just saying this. This is Trump knows exactly what he's doing. And the thing is, the culture is not a reality creating machine. It is the imagination expressing what it thinks spiritual reality is, okay? There is a reality to human life, our relationships, the values of things, what is good and what is bad, that you can't see. There's no place where it's carved in stone except the Ten Commandments and they got broke. There's no, place where it's carved in stone. This is what's right and this is what's wrong. Even the Bible, when you read the Bible, you have to interpret it. These are things that are murky in human life, and our imaginations are where they live. That is what the imagination is. It is an organ for perceiving the invisible. That is what the imagination is. And it's expressed in the arts. But it's also expressed in all the things we do, the way we dress, the way we talk to one another. All of these things express what we think is acceptable and what we think is not. That's not necessarily reality, because just like when you see a hallucination, your imagination can get reality wrong, okay? And so it's not a reality creating machine. They just think it is. They think it's going to create reality. They think if they can change the way we use words, if we can change the way we see things, if they can change the way we think, then reality will change. But it will not. Our imaginations only have a limited power to express what that invisible reality is. And then we change it as we find out whether we got it wrong. The reason the culture is so desperately important in this moment that I am willing to take a risk on Donald Trump is that the United States is drowning in fantasy. So this movie comes out by a very well-respected director, Paul Thomas Anderson. He did, There Will Be Blood. He did The Master. He did a bunch of films that are really, Boogie Nights, which is my favorite of his movies. You have to be ready to tolerate a lot of nudity and crudity, but I thought Boogie Nights was his best film. He brought out this film, one battle after another, and it was brought, unlike his other films, which are indie-type films, this was brought out like a blockbuster, and a lot of money went into it. I think about $130 million went into it, and it was promoted like a blockbuster. It's gotten tremendous reviews. It has big stars in it: Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, big stars, and it's a big movie. It's almost 3 hours long. Here's a little trailer. It's based on a book by Thomas Pynchon, a writer kind of back from my day, wrote a book called Vineland, and it's about radical revolutionaries who have to run from the cops. Here it is.
What I'm doing here is I'm creating a closed circuit. Very important to keep your cap shunted like this so you don't accidentally detonate your charge.
Don't stop. I want you to create a show. This is an announcement, a revolution. The message is clear.
I'll be seeing you very soon.
Not if I see you first.
For bringing justice to the vigilante group known as the French 75, we are here to award Stephen Lockjaw with the Medal of Honor.
You have to understand, Willa.
Me and Mom used to run around and do some real bad shit. They got hurt. Now they're coming after us.
All right, now they're coming after us. So what happens is they're a revolutionary group. They blow things up. They try to free. It takes place in a completely, you have no idea when it's taking place. But, all these Latinos have been imprisoned and, they're blowing things up and attacking soldiers and all this. And one of them gets busted, rats on the rest of them, and they all have to flee. And Leonardo DiCaprio flees with his daughter. And then the rest of the movie takes place 16 years later when they start to track him down. All right. Now, I've always thought that Anderson, the director, I've always thought he was talented, but overrated. I always thought he was overrated because he was a communist. He was a socialist. There Will Be Blood is a film that was praised to the skies. I watched it. I thought it was good. I thought it had good performances. The guy's really good with actors. And I thought, yeah, it's being overpraised because it's communist. Same thing with this movie. It is being praised to the sky. It's a good movie. It's entertaining. Got some funny bits. It's like every movie now. It's an hour too long. Sean Penn is in it, one of the greatest actors of his generation, also like a crazy man who supported terrorism and communism. DiCaprio is very funny in it and all this stuff. Listen to this review from Hollywood Reporter. Now, Hollywood Reporter, I'm always telling you about Publishers Weekly, who called my novel, After That, the Dark, brilliant. You should have pre-ordered it by now. You've had plenty of time. Don't stop. The Hollywood Reporter is the publisher weekly of Hollywood. Variety, the same. These are trade papers where they write reviews for the people in the business, okay? This is by a guy named Richard Newby, who freelances for HR. And he says, the reception to One Battle After Another comes as no surprise. He's saying it's ecstatic, which is not entirely true. It is the first movie that Anderson made that has made money, and it's done well. But the reviews have been better than, people aren't really talking about it that much, except on this left-wing culture. And they are overpraising it because it romanticizes left-wing violence. There's no question about this. It doesn't show the leftists as being perfect. It shows them being flawed. It makes fun of them. But their violence is trying to change the world, and that is a good thing because we're living in this America of this oppressive, tyrannical America. And this is what the reviewer in Hollywood Reporter, Richard Newby, says. He says, this is a film that has its finger on the pulse of America and shines a light on unspoken truths about our desire for change and the costs to get us there. Many are too afraid to fully commit ourselves to changing it. Most of us has been guilty of it. Hell, I've been guilty too. We retweet and share donation pages and consider that to be the extent of our power. We acknowledge the abuses of power happening in America, the funding of genocide, the demonization of transgender individuals, the dehumanization of Black, Latino, and Arab individuals. And we may even think of this consciousness as small acts of revolution, but culturally we lost sight of being true revolutionaries once the initial anger subsided and capitalism called us with shiny new distractions that so easily stole our attention. This is calling for violence, which the left does all the time. There are violent right-wingers. There are crazy right-wingers. There are anti-Semitic right-wingers. You have heard me call all of them out on this very program, but the left is violent all the time because this is the way they think. They talk about funding of genocide. What are they talking about? They're talking about the Israelis trying not to have genocide committed against them. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about dehumanizing. I mean, the writer himself is Black. Is he dehumanized? I mean, he seems to be doing pretty well. They're talking about the dehumanization of Latinos who voted for Trump. Almost 50% of Latinos voted for Trump. Did they just miss the fact that they had been dehumanized? These are not arguments. This is a fantasy that this guy is having about the state of America, and it is a fantasy that justifies violence. We all know it because every single one of us who has gone to speak on a college campus has been chased from pillar to post and endangered and has to have bodyguards and has to have police presence, which no left-winger going onto a campus has to have. The demonization of transgender individuals consists of saying that you can't change your sex, which is scientifically the case, okay? That's not demonizing anybody. I've seen Ben Shapiro sit down and talk to a transgender person because he felt he spoke to him too harshly about the fact that he wasn't a woman. It's not demonizing anybody. It's just telling the bloody truth. You don't have a revolution to get rid of the bloody truth, but you do if you're drowning in fantasy. And this country is drowning in fantasy after 30 years of the left owning the means of producing reality. I mean, there's just been a poll that 50% of people who self-identified as left of center believe it is somewhat justified to murder prominent billionaires. 50%, almost 50%. 50% of people who self-identified as left of center. That imagination capture will continue into a new generation unless we take the culture back, because it doesn't matter if you lower taxes. It doesn't matter if you get rid of regulations. If these kids are pouring into schools and into movie theaters and into bookstores where this is the story they are being told. It doesn't matter what your triumphs are in the political sphere, because the new generations will come up thinking this is the way the country is. The message of this movie, One Battle After Another, is we revolutionaries, in the book they're from the 1960s, which makes more sense, but the basic message of the movie is we failed to change the world, but you young people can now change the world, and off the young people go to do the violence that didn't work before. it's so important. And I don't care, people say, well, politics is downstream from culture, but culture is downstream from politics. There's truth to all those things. But when I talk about the culture, I'm talking about this atmosphere that we breathe. I've learned to see it by reading novels and by watching movies and by understanding them and by writing them and by creating them. I have learned to see it in a way I just don't think people do on the right. I think we're bad about this on the right. But that's not what the culture is. The novels aren't culture. They're artifacts of culture. They show you what the culture is. They teach you, which is why every time a conservative, which happens to me almost every week, some conservative says to me, I never read novels. I think, yes, that's why you're going to lose the country, because you don't see where the real fight is taking place. There's no debate about who causes political violence in this country. It's the left. That's what causes it. This fantasy that they have, a fantastical America, and not living up to a fantastical America that doesn't live up to fantastical ideas that have never been lived up to by anyone, anywhere. And so therefore, wherever there's injustice, it's injustice everywhere, and there can't be any peace until there's justice, so there'll never be any peace. That is the fantasy that the left is living in, and we have got to create pieces of culture that speak the truth and live in a way that we have a culture that speaks the truth. With rising costs everywhere, we tend to overestimate what things actually do cost, including life insurance, where 72% of Americans guess way too high. Policy Genius makes finding affordable coverage simple so your loved ones have the financial protection they need. See if Policy Genius can help you find 20-year life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Policy Genius transforms the typically overwhelming process of shopping for life insurance into a straightforward experience. With just a few clicks, you can compare notes from top insurers to find coverage that fits your needs and budget. Their team of licensed agents guides you through every step, handling paperwork and answering questions without any sales pressure. The platform clearly displays all your options, coverage amounts, prices, and terms, eliminating confusion and guesswork. As the country's leading online insurance marketplace with thousands of five-star reviews, Policy Genius has earned trust by helping customers find policies perfectly suited to their unique situations, making this important financial decision surprisingly simple. You don't want to wait on this. Life insurance is important. It not just keeps your family safe, it gives you peace of mind. So secure your family's future with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/Klavan to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/KLAVAN. Final chapter, Trump the God. Just going off Charlemagne the God. There's Trump the God. So Rosie O'Donnell, there's a funny clip from Rosie O'Donnell talking to Nicole Wallace. And Nicole Wallace is the one who just loves every leftist. She was I don't even know, she has a podcast called The Best People. I don't even know if she's still a news, quote unquote, caster. She's talking to Rosie O'Donnell, who's crazy, right? She's nuts. And Rosie O'Donnell tells her that even her therapist doesn't understand her Trump derangement syndrome. And this is Rosie talking to Nicole.
My therapist said, "Why are you so upset?" And I said to her, "Why are you not?"
Yeah. Yeah, I have that conversation too, because the gaslighting that I think you're alluding to, if you're a thoughtful, informed person, you do stop and say, well, maybe it is me.
Yeah, maybe. Ladies, listen to your therapist. Your therapist is saying you are the crazy one. And, there's Trump delusion syndrome on the right when people think he's perfect, when anytime you, object to something he does, you're the fool. It's because of you have some psychological problem or something is wrong with you. No. I mean, Trump has done things where he goes over the top. He even says himself that he's testing the waters to see what the court does, but he's never defied the court, which I really appreciate, because then we're in big trouble, even though the courts have been absurd, even though the courts have violated principles that Trump hasn't violated. But, that's a kind of TDS too. These are just people. I don't think that Trump is perfect. I don't have a lot of emotional feelings about Trump. I think he's a godsend. I have a lot of emotional feelings about God. And God, because we know God doesn't send, when I say he's a godsend, God sends some crazy F stuff, to help us. I mean, like it's really is interesting, the people he elevates to help us. When I've commented a couple of times on King David, this is a perfect example on King David, who killed a guy because he didn't want him to find out that he had slept with his wife and gotten her pregnant, right? So he sends this guy out to the front to get him killed because he doesn't want him to find out that he slept with his wife. That's bad. That's a thing. And everybody says, well, he was sorry. He repented. Did he bring the guy back to life? Did he, how much do you have to repent for that? Other people have to go to prison. He remained king, right? And people say, well, he was a man after God's heart. I have a lot of thoughts about that. I won't talk about that now. But still, God does not send perfect people to help. And I believe that Jewish lore misunderstood what was great about David, and they thought it was the fact that he had built Israel into an empire, and they were kept expecting a Messiah who looked like that. Instead, they got some guy who got crucified instead. How could that be the Messiah? I think that was a mistake they made about David, and it's a mistake that some people make about Trump. Just because he wins doesn't mean he's in the right, and I think that that's the wrong thing to do. So I asked myself, why am I immune? Because this is Trump's superpower, is driving people insane. He drives people insane. He just does. He's just absolutely great at it. And I sometimes wonder why I have not been driven insane by Trump derangement syndrome. And I was thinking about, preparing for the show, I was thinking about this new strategy where every good that he does is forgotten. All the great accomplishments he has are forgotten, but all the possible things that could go wrong fill the headlines. I was thinking about that, and I thought, that's the way I treat God. That is the way I personally treat God. All through my life, I mean, like everybody in life, I've suffered pains and sorrows and betrayals and griefs. We all have these in our life. But when I look back at my life, it is just absolutely true that God has taken every single one of those sorrows, and that haven't been any less sorrowful, but he has done something good with them. And it's been God who's done it, and he's made sure that I know it was God who's done it, because it had nothing to do with me. But some brilliant thing would happen that wouldn't have happened had I not suffered a pain or been shaped by a pain. And that'll be God. And so everything in my past that has hurt me, God has used to the good in my life. And yet, I forget all that all the time. Tell me I'm alone in this, okay? Tell me I'm the only one who's doing this. I forget that all the time, the good that God has done, and I worry about the thing that's going to happen next. But what about this? Oh my God, can I trust you for this? God, what's going to happen here? I know I'm the only person who does this, so I'm just confessing to you. We all do it, right? Isn't that the way everybody treats God? I mean, if you read the Bible, God is constantly saying, hey, remember when I caused the sea to part and got you out of Egypt? And the Hebrews are always saying, there's no food in the desert. Here is some food falling out of the sky. But now we're thirsty. We're telling you, what have you done to us? What will happen to us? Over and over and over again. God keeps saying, look at what I did for you. Look at what I did for you. And the people keep saying, yeah, but now something terrible is going to happen. The press treats Trump like people treat God. And that really tells me something, right? That really tells me something. See, leftism is authoritarianism. They think it's not because they think their goals are good. We just want to make everything fair. But in order to make everything fair, you have to give a central authority power over other people's lives. To take your money is your life, right? Time is money. Time is life. Your money is your life. When you let the government take 50% of your income, 30% of your income, why is that there? And they say, well, they're doing something very important. It's for something very important. If I hold a guy up at gunpoint and give some of the money I take from him to a beggar, that's nice, but it's still robbery, So the question is, why is the government taking our money? Why is it investing our money? Why is it redirecting our money or taking the money that I made and giving it to someone else? It's a good question. They may not really, it's very possible that the world would be a better place if they didn't do those things, right? So leftism is authoritarianism, which means it worships people. It thinks that people are going to do a good job when they are in power. And what I believe, as anyone who's listened to the show means, is you give people power, it screws them up. It corrupts them. And the more power they have, the more corrupt they get until you have absolute power and they're corrupted. Absolutely. The beautiful thing about America, up till about I would say 30 years ago, is that the president didn't have that much power. He could do things, but not that much. And so you didn't get the kind of corruption that we have had ever since Obama. Now, I think the left hates Trump because he's not the God they want. I think they hate Trump because of the way people hate God, because they don't get the things that they want. But see, my priest is always teasing me that I preach. It's not true. Well, I don't want to preach. I don't mean to preach. I just think God is the center of reality, and you can't talk about reality without talking about the way people feel about God. That's the thing. I think when you don't talk about that, you're not talking about anything. When I tell you that Jew hatred is the hatred of Jesus Christ, it's not because I'm trying to, preach anything to you. It's because I believe that Jew hatred is actually the hatred of Jesus Christ, that a lot of the things that we do in life are because of our feeling toward God. And if you worship God and God alone, and you put not your faith in princes, then you don't have to feel that Donald Trump is perfect, and you don't have to feel that he's a disaster. You have to ask yourself, what is God doing in this moment through Donald Trump? Which is a different question altogether. It's a different question. It's not saying, David, King David slept with a woman, got her pregnant, and then killed her husband. That's the way it goes. You ask yourself, well, wait, what is God doing in this moment? And I just cannot think of another person who could have done what Trump has done, who could have led the charge against this cultural cancer that the left has had us suffering from for the last 30 years. And I say only 30 years because it's really been 50 years, but I say 30 years because they basically had a monopoly on the culture for 30 years. So when I look at Trump, I think good job, God. But it doesn't mean that I can't criticize him. It doesn't mean that I'm attacking him when I criticize him. It doesn't mean that I don't put the thing that I put first after God, after family, is this country. This country, no other country. This is the country that I sacrificed some of my career to talk about, because it seems to me special, it seems to me beautiful, and it seems to me mortal, because it was made by mortal men. It won't last forever. It won't last forever. One of the friends I was talking with said, this is going to be the end of the Republic. And I said, well, the Republic will end, but it makes a difference whether it ends in 5 years or 100 years. And he said, doesn't make any difference to me. And I said, to me, it makes all the difference. That's all you can do with human things. All you can do with human things is keep them alive one more day. You go to the doctor knows that one day he's going to fail to keep you alive, because everybody dies. Everything dies. Our freedom will die. This republic will die. But not today. Not today. And the reason it won't die today is because somehow, through what truly seems to me an unbelievable providence, the stranglehold of this death cult has been broken. And it has been broken. The things that have broken it are many, but the leadership in that moment belonged to Donald Trump. I see the hand of God in sending that to us when we needed it most. So personally, I'm having a wonderful time. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. It is fun. I have tried it. I hope you play it carefully, play it with good common sense. But if you like this sort of thing and you can handle it, it is a lot of fun. Prize Picks has really stepped up their game this season with some exciting new features. The biggest game changer is their new Stacks feature. Now, you can stack the same player up to 3 times in one lineup. So if you're confident Josh Allen is going to have a monster game, you can pick more on his passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all together. They've also added a social element where you can follow other players and copy their lineups with one click. Whether it's a friend making great picks or a celebrity partner whose strategy you trust, just check out their selections in the new Feed tab. Plus, with injury reboots protecting your lineups, if a player gets hurt in the first half, and fast, secure withdrawals, it's easy to see why millions of users have made Prize Picks America's top daily fantasy app for testing your football knowledge. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Klavan to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Klavan to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right, and it's even better to know how to spell Klavan if you want. This is Klavan. When the left attacks, the answer is not silence. The answer isn't to retreat. It isn't to do less. The answer is to show up and show up everywhere, to make our voices louder than ever, to push out more content, more truth, more breaking news, more investigative journalism, fighting harder than ever before. That's what we're doing at the Daily Wire. This October, Daily Wire Plus members are getting more new films, more new series, more new documentaries, and more of everything you expect from us. Join now and get it all with 40% off new Daily Wire Plus annual memberships. The Daily Wire is growing. New talent, new shows, big things in the works. And to keep up, we're hiring producers and writers. If you can take a show from idea to execution, manage crews, write sharp segments, and deliver content that crushes on YouTube, podcasts, and social, this is your shot. Join us for the next decade of Daily Wire. Apply today at dailywire.com/careers. Klavan Klapbacks.
It's in these hills.
Sisters of the Brave Beaver.
Who are they?
They grow weed. They're nuns.
Is that some kind of sick joke on God?
I'm not joking.
That's one battle after another. It has some funny scenes in it, too. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a good movie. All right, from Emily. You always bring up the fact that you know people who should have gotten divorced, but back in the day, the public stigma wouldn't allow it. Do I always bring that up? All right. Well, I'm not sure I do, but I think your argument is the same argument as those who are against capitalism, because capitalism is a bad economic system except for all the other systems. I don't expect social perfection if we return to an at-fault system where it is socially unacceptable to get divorced. However, all the options are worse. Yeah, I think you mistake what I'm saying here. I agree with you. I agree that there should be a heavy stigma on divorce, and there should be a genuine obstacle course, legal obstacle course in getting a divorce. You know, it should be really difficult to get a divorce, and it should be looked down upon and frowned upon. But it should not be impossible. And it should not be so looked down upon that we don't understand. I remember a friend of mine who was going to get a divorce, and I was going to go and read him the Riot Act because he had little children, and I think divorcing when you have little children. And I sat down with him, and he told me the story, and I thought, you know what? The guy is right. The children will be better off if this marriage falls apart. That's how horrible it was. So I think that there just has to be some leeway. But I agree with you basically. I think that divorce is a disaster. It's a disaster for children, and I think that it really does need to be stigmatized and made difficult. All right. From Jennifer, I appreciate how much laughter and wisdom you bring together in one place every Friday, but the world feels often like it's spinning out of control. Children and grandchildren I love have walked away from God, and I'm powerless to bring them back. Some are deciding to dive deep into the trans community. My husband is greatly challenged by a major medical emergency from the vaccine. The violence in the world is mounting to a fearful level, so I've decided to live by Habakkuk 3, there's a quote, though the fig tree should not blossom nor fruit be on the vines, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. My question is, how do you do it? How do I jump for joy when I can hardly breathe sometimes? What might I be getting wrong? How do you do it? I hope this question makes sense. Of course it makes sense. And joy, when I use the word joy, because I do believe we should rejoice, and I believe we should rejoice in the world as it is, I do not mean happiness. Happiness, you're happy when happy things happen, and you're sad when unhappy things happen. And my best example, my best comparison is that when you go to a movie and something sad happens, you may cry because the character died or something like that, but you come out and you love the movie. And so joy is loving life. It is loving creation. It is loving the world that God has made, even in its broken state. There is nothing wrong with you for feeling bad about a child who is flirting with this crazy induced insanity of transgenderism, or that your husband is ill. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling that way. What you're trying to cultivate through love of God and through prayers to God and through communication with God and through talking to God, so you kind of understand the world as he sees it a little better, if you can, what you're trying to cultivate is this kind of uber sense that in your sorrow, in your sadness, you still are glad to be alive, that this is the story of your life. And, there is no life, there is no other life that you should be having. This is the life that you are having. And what does God want you to make of it? When I was talking before about the fact that God has done something beautiful with the hurt in my life, a lot of times that happened because I said, okay, I'm in pain. I've been hurt. Somebody has done something bad. Something bad has happened to me. What am I supposed to make of this, God? How am I supposed to react to this, right? And when I look at Scripture and when I talk to God and when I read books that the smarter people than me have written about God, I find an answer, and I find that through that answer, my vision expands and I can rejoice in life, even though I still am hurt. I'm still sad, because you're not supposed to be detached. I see a lot of evangelicals going around and you say, how you doing? Oh, I'm highly favored. I'm blessed and highly favored. Yeah, what's going on? Well, my wife walked out on me and I broke my leg, but I'm blessed and highly favored. No, you're not supposed to be an idiot. You're supposed to react to things like a human being, but you're supposed to see that as a story of your life that is taking you somewhere that God wants you to go, and think about how you get to it. Never mind, though, where God wants you to go. Where I want you to go is to dailywire.com/subscribe. The worst segue in broadcasting history, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Drive home carefully. Become a member today. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans, or you will be plunged into the Klavanlessness that is Klavanlessness, and you will not like it because it is awful and it's Klavanless, which tells you how bad it really is. If you are a member, come to Member Block. If you're not, go to dailywire.com/subscribe and use code Klavan at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.